We were allegedly supposed to have a more detailed customization feature for Bayonetta 3, along with a myriad of concepts that would have had amazing potential. Just only 7 hours ago, Twitter users by the name of Rikan and Likovacs, I'm sorry if I did mispronounce your names, uncovered what seemed to have been unused, temporary or early concept designs for Bayonetta 3. I knew of Rikan from their involvement in digging into unused content for Bayonetta 2, which was where I read that the Gatling gun was originally meant to be included. But if there are any more collaborators out there that I missed, please let me know in the comments below. I'm going to go over what caught my attention the most, starting with these beautiful screenshots of what looked like early development gameplay, with the player being in Ginungagap, Egypt, and Tokyo. I didn't find these in the wiki page, so please take these with a grain of salt until someone in the comments provides a source for it, but thank you to Likovacs for showcasing these awesome screenshots. Most of these are likely placeholder files before they went in and coded the proper ones. All you graphic designers and people in tech know what I'm talking about. These early screenshots really accentuates brave Cereza's braids, much more than when they were tied into a bow in the final cut. But I don't know if it's just me, but the overworld aesthetic really brings back the vibe, especially in these screenshots of Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 2, so much more than Bayonetta 3. Just something small I really noticed, Bayonetta 3 seemed to have less polished, like literally less polished, like there's no shine in the characters and in the models. Less than Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 2. Looking past all the draft and bad color theory, this city looks insanely different to any city in the final cut. But it looks like one of those common cyberpunkish looking cities, especially the background, that they could have placed from Astral Chain or games similar to that. You see a very different health bar that looks more reminiscent of Bayonetta 1 and early health bars for homunculi, looking much more robotic and having a sort of Vanquish kind of vibe. Instead of the final Umbran Tears of Blood, they started with the placeholder of 5 collectible tears. And moving on to the verse finish UI, it definitely looks like a level between Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 3's one, with the painted edges that we see from Bayonetta 3's design and the scuffed texture from Bayonetta 1. And besides from the aesthetic, you can tell that this is the dev room since the damage is almost 99 million. I have to ask, has anyone discovered the dev room, or if there is one, in Bayonetta 3 in the emulator? Let me know below. There's this early character select screen with a John placeholder design from Bayonetta 2. But moving on, there are these unused lines which I think have quite the story potential. In chapter 2, Enzo supposedly had these lines of "long time no see, do you like that hairstyle, can you introduce me to your friends," which I believe he is talking to brave Cereza, and it would have been so nice to see more interactions with the main Enzo. The ones I showed you are Google translated, so if anyone can properly translate them, leave them in the comments, but I saw another translation by Kulisu, shoutouts to you, where the main Enzo is said to say, "Guess it's time to introduce you to my friends," which is quite mysterious. Could have Enzo had a bigger role on the city side of things, where he calls his underground network to help out with the situation? I think that would have been nice to see the Mafia Enzo, or his Mafia side, return. There's this early concept rendition of brave Cereza, which looks much more like Bayonetta 1's Bayonetta, having smaller framed glasses and a large purple flower on her wrists. What's also interesting is that they had concepts for a disintegrating version of the 3 logo, which made me think there was probably thoughts of evidently showing a happy ending. They left that ending super vague, with all the variants dying, and maybe this disappearing 3 was going to be a reversal for all the bad things that were happening. Like they showed all the timelines being destroyed with no future footage of any world being restored. It was all just up to speculation. Also, there are a lot of reused icons and elements brought over from Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 2, but also a cleaner file of all the new torture attacks used. But there is an interesting Infernal Demon entry of Madame Kepri, which got me thinking that they had plans to have Beta 4 Rosa, or French Rosa, to summon the Protector of Time. Maybe because this variant was written to be more reliant on her inventions, or that they changed this version of Rosa to have contracted the Umbran Clock Tower instead of Capri, but could you imagine seeing Madame Capri stepping in to save Rosa, slightly hinting that Rosa had contracted or had the ability to contract more than one signature demon, with Capri being the last resort. She'd save her from being infected by that homunculi before we have to shoot her, which then can be the way where they finally show a fight between Madame Butterfly and Madame Capri. Oh my gosh, Crazy Gal would have loved this. In addition to Capri's entry, you also have unused files for Mikantakutli's X and Y forms, a cluster mode for Labulas, and even the Umbran armor from the Umbran Clock Tower. Again, missed opportunity to finally showcase a fight between using Madama Butterfly and Capri to see who was in fact stronger. Moving on to this screenshot, there is a placeholder name connected to Strider, where he is labeled the Lost Fairy. I know this is a very small detail, but that would have been super cool to have been revealed to us during our first encounter. That would have sparked the thought of the existence existence of fairies in the Bayoverse, which would have made Lucan's introduction a little more cool, at least instilling, hinting, and foreshadowing to us that fairies exist. There are apparently more unused texts of brave Cereza chasing Egyptian John during the Egypt arc, but it's just a few witty remarks that could have been used. Pause right here if you want to read them all, but my favorite being the last one, where she has a more annoyed attitude of being called a princess by Egyptian John during the chase. Moving on, there is a scrapped flashback sequence between Egyptian John and Egyptian Bayo, but in chapter 9, which I found a little interesting. Brave Cereza is likely talking to Egyptian Bayonetta, where she has this remark of her believing in her, which I know it's not really that much since it's only one line, but I like to think it would have added a little more depth to show how she saw her variants. Like most of the time, Brave Cereza just treated a lot of her variants as like they were anyone. Nothing really special, only to get their weapon after they die, which was a little annoying, but it is what it is. The Bayo Maker is what I believe is the most popular feature in this data mine, and I am praying that this is going to be patched into the game in the future. But according to the concepts, we were about to have the option of customizing Cereza's head, hands, feet, skin color, and shirt, which is much more advanced than the one we currently have. It's not as intricate as Code Veins, obviously, but being able to mix and match the outfits in between the variants would have been such a great start. But here we go with the original chapter names, with the side chapter names being the most interesting. Agent J, Agent J Strikes, Agent J's Peril, and Agent J's Escape, really emphasizing Jean's own story path with these names. But you have an extra chapter name called Agent J's Last Stand, which I think could have been a chapter in its own, as us playing as Jean against Sigurd before he literally stabs her in the back. I believe they should have involved Jean much more when she was alive in that moment where we found out Sigurd double crosses us. You know, something where she knew all along, with Sigurd potentially performing illusions on her about her dead mother or her past or her biggest weaknesses, which would really show how resilient John would be to overcome those illusions. And then that's when she gets stabbed. At least we would have a canon gameplay of her versing the antagonist. But to understand where this missing chapter would have been, or could have been just a mini chapter to be honest, where it happens before our fight with Dark Adam, where it ends in a stalemate, and then after our fight with Dark Adam, that's when we see her getting stabbed in the back. Because it really does feel like a huge empty patch for Jean that we the player just was forced to ignore. Another interesting concept chapter is the Infinite, likely giving us a Rikan chapter where we play as him, possibly killing off and cleaning up what was left in New York after we left for Thule, since there was literally no footage of that city again being shown, like the aftermath or Rikan's future perspective. Nothing. This is why I also think the game could have been 28 chapters or 30 chapters, even if we had to delay it a few more years, to experience the characters and be more attached to them before that conclusive ending. In addition, there are early descriptions for Naive Angel mode, an achievement change in chapter 5 when you are chasing Luca as Viola, but what really caught my eye the most was Lucan's name originally being Lucan with a C, which further supports the previous theory of mine that the character's name was inspired by the legend of Lycaon, having a more similar spelling. If there is anyone who can help out with more of the translations on the website, follow my buddy Rikan in the description below and support those who mine these awesome findings. They're all in the description as well. Bayonetta 3 for Best Action Game 2022. I'm Rikan, and never get disheartened.